Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. And you know what? Welcome back to another great live stream. Beautiful Friday afternoon. Just finished wrapping up for this week's of videos. Got a whole new barrage of great videos out for you next week, and it should be really exciting for sure. Hi there, Kevin. Welcome back, and great to have you back again for sure. It's great to see you join in on the live stream. As always, it's really appreciated when I see the usual viewers that pop in and say hi. It's actually, it does mean a lot. Believe it, it does, because just to see that, that regular support, it does rejuvenate, and that kind of thing does motivate to to keep delivering, keep bringing the goods, and actually just interact. Honestly, is really what it's about. So today, we'll let people chime in here as well if they've got questions or offerings or what have you. But today I kind of want to focus on the most trusted cars. As we see, the title of the video, or the title of the stream, is the most trusted car brands, the most trusted car brands. And again, I'd like this to be very interactive. Because it's always easy to say, hey, you know what, Toyota. I mean, we hear some of your favorite YouTubers that aren't Exotic Car Place or aren't Mark, and they're always going on about Toyota and how great Toyota is. And they make a lot of good, reliable products. But there's a lot of other good brands out there, or maybe not entire brands, maybe parts of those specific other brands that, maybe they produce certain models that are great, but maybe not the whole brand. But what is a brand that generally you find is very, very reliable? Snake Eyes, Porsche and Koenigsegg. You know what? Porsche can be, especially 911s, as far as you drive any other car as hard as a Porsche, and it won't tolerate it. So Porsches are built with some hard driving behind it. Now, a Koenigsegg, it's funny you mentioned that. A couple of years ago, I was down in Calgary at the Lamborghini dealer up on the hill. For those of you who are kind of aware of that area, I was up on the hill. Lambo, before they started renovating their dealership, they had a sales gentleman there. I don't think he's there anymore. Maybe that's why. But they had some cool toys in the back. I mean, looking in the showroom of Aventadors and and Huracans, it's pretty exciting. But he said, I've got something even more interesting. So he took me down to the bay, the repair shop, and there's a couple of really interesting cars. The second one I'll reserve comment first here for a second. But the first one is a Jaguar XJ220 that was up on the hoist. I mean, I saw cars there that were, on an entirely another level. Cars that we grew up with as the ultimate in supercars. So there's an XJ220, which is a little bit of an odd car, but it was quite impressive. But then he had, this gentleman showed me over to a Koenigsegg. And yeah, Regera, I think it was. That thing was absolutely spectacular. Carbon from corner to corner. Absolutely amazing, stunning car. It was sort of a burgundy color, all exposed carbon that was basically, well, just covered in the laminate typical thing. Absolutely ridiculous car, and in a good way. So yeah, I've seen those kind of cars up front, in person. Unfortunately, I never got to drive it. Probably wouldn't want to, with carbon wheels, and you hit a curb with that. I wouldn't even want to. I would just run. I'd just run away, open the door, and run off. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that, but it would be pretty stressful. So driving that car would be pretty crazy. So I guess Koenigsegg, probably not the most trusted, but maybe Porsche. I could go with that for sports cars. Anyhow, so see why I would. Amazing, yeah, you betcha. Oh, they absolutely are. When you see them in person, it's pretty insane. So let's talk about the most trusted brands. The most trusted brands. If I were to say to you, you had to go shopping for a car to buy for your parents. Maybe your parents are older, they don't have a lot of money, but they don't want to be inundated with, ill-fated repairs and expensive maintenance, and they don't want to be hammered with those kinds of costs. What would you consider a trusted brand? A brand that you could show to your, offer up to your parents and say, look, here's a great car for you. You're going to have pretty good success with that. And I would trust that it's not going to leave you in a world of financial hurt. Do you have any thoughts on that? CY Woods, yeah, Lexus, 100%. We know Lexus have had a few troubles lately with with that 3.4, that new twin turbo V6. But you know what? Put that behind you. They're going to get it sorted out. I mean, Lexus, Toyota, they always do. And if there's one thing we have faith, they always have a bug or two in the first couple of years, and then they fix it, and you'll never hear from it again. You just need a good exterminator, so to speak. I'm trying to be funny here. It's clearly not funny. If anybody can put a laugh or something emoji, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, Lexus is very, very reliable and trusted. Not perfect, but you know what? Nothing is. And I would say that probably as trustworthy as you'll find in the luxury car segment. I can't think of another brand that would be as trustworthy. Maybe Range Rover. Anybody? Range Rover, perhaps? Land Rovers? Okay, maybe not. I'm trying to be funny again. See, the sense of humor. It's a Friday afternoon after a long week of filming and, like I said, creating some great content for you for next week. You've got to come back on Monday where I talk about the crusty car news again. I've got some interesting storylines there for you. You're definitely going to want to stop by and see that. Yeah, CY Wood, for sure. Porsche, another one. I would agree with that. Again, 911s. Every generation has a few problems. It seems like the 996 and the IMS, some of the earlier cars, the old SC had the rubber-centered clutch and magnesium cases in the 2.7s and the dual distributors and the 3.6s. And, the list goes on. They always have that thing. But generally, they're really robust and really trustworthy. Rocky says the Toyota 4Runner, 5th generation. Yeah, you betcha. Can't go wrong with a Toyota 4Runner. And I think what I've experienced with 4Runners is I've got a brother-in-law who's had a few of them. I've got friends who've had 4Runners, and I've never heard anybody with any horror stories out of a 4Runner. And I think that's what kind of gives Toyota their reputation, really. It's their just unwavering reputation for durability is the 4Runner and the Tacoma. The Tacoma is another workhorse, and both of those vehicles, very similar platform, are built to last pretty much forever. So yeah, I would agree with that, and you'll have no dispute here for sure. Severin Lorenzo says 3 years ago, I bought a low mileage CPO Audi A6 3.0, still running strong with no issues, only oil changes. Yeah, and it's good there, Severin, for sure. And I would say Audi is a hit and miss kind of a brand, and I truly believe that. I do believe that, and I've mentioned this in some of the videos, and if a lot of you guys have been watching the videos, I would say the 2-liter, the TFSIs, the TSIs or the EA888s, the engines, the 2-liter turbos with the direct injection, no shortage of problems there with oil burning and water pumps and cooling system issues and leaks and O2 sensors and check engine lights and the list goes on. But that's largely in their base engines, and I would agree. I think with Audi, you sort of have to step into their upstream stuff. Their 2.5-liter, the Turbo 5, amazing, probably one of their best engines. The 4-liter twin turbo V8, awesome. But that's the engine that Porsche uses, Audi, Lamborghini, Urus. So that 4-liter twin turbo, high maintenance, high dollars, pretty robust for the most part, though. But yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, Rocky. So by far, the 5th generation 4Runner is the best. Yeah, you know what? And probably not so much. Which generation was that? The 1990. That kind of that total rounded off refresh. I think it was 1990 when they came out with that. with that 3 liter. That was the most, probably one of the most problematic in the way of head gaskets. But outside of that, great vehicles, totally. What else we got? Snake Eyes. I still like Toyota. I just placed down payment on a 25 Tacoma TRD Pro. And yeah, Snake Eyes, good call on that. You know, it's interesting. A friend of mine just bought a brand new Tacoma. And he asked me, he kind of comes from Ford, and he asked me, "Hey, Mark, I'm looking at a couple options. Looking at the Tacoma, and I'm looking at the Ford Ranger. What do you think?" You know what? Even knowing what I know today, and the 2.4s haven't really seen failures, just the 3.4s have. Um, did you get the auto? I mean, be careful with that. That new 8-speed automatic, that's the latest on the press. Have you heard that 8-speed automatic transmission? Um, there's thousands of cases or recalls of Toyota having to replace potentially because of some torque converter actuator. And yeah, there could be some problems with that 8-speed auto because it's kind of new and revised. If you can get a manual, you're definitely better off. But it's still going to be a great machine, and I steered my buddy to that. I mean, versus a Ranger, yeah. So that's a pretty no-brainer. Yeah, that's a great vehicle, great choice, and they're beautiful. I think they're very cool-looking trucks. And the TRD Pro, hey, what can you say? You got one of the best ones of the batch. Let's just see. Rocky Mark, CX-5 and Mazda CX-3 are coming up strong right behind Toyota. Mazda's legendary MX-5 are gems. You know it, 100%. I think I would definitely trust Mazda any day and all day these days. I was looking recently, and I don't know if I mentioned to you guys, I was looking for maybe buying a third row SUV. So I looked at the CX-90. I wasn't in love with it, but that's also a new engine with that turbo inline six and a mild hybrid. So I wasn't loving the looks, but then I've got a buddy who just bought a new CX-50, and I love the looks of it. I love the way it looks. It purrs. It's so quiet. It's a great looking ride. Um, yeah, it's a little Spartan, but that's good. That's simple in a good way, and they're reliable. And yeah, they're pretty much bulletproof. These new Mazdas, the CX-5 and the 50, which is the lower, wider, more aggressive looking one, but the CX-5 is absolutely bulletproof. So are the Mazda 3s. If I'd suggest though, I would say, the non-turbos would probably be the best. If you just want to get in and go and pack a pile of miles on, I'd go with the non-GT, go with the base models with the 2.5-liter four bangers, and maybe skip out on the turbos. But if you want that pizzazz, you want that little extra zing, yeah, go with the turbos, especially if you don't plan to keep it forever anyway. But Mazdas are really reliable these days, and the MX-5 is a gem. I love the MX-5, the Miatas. They're a lot of fun, and they're reliable, so you can't go wrong there. I think what I would say from my perspective too, and I actually did a video here. I actually filmed it this weekend or this week about Hondas. And I know a lot of you guys like to watch this other channel. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It starts with an S. I don't know. This old guy. Yeah, what's his name? Starts with an S. Anyway, he goes on now about how the older Hondas are way better than the newer Hondas. And I would agree with that aspect. And I kind of see the same thing. And so we bought an older Honda. Now we've had it for a couple of years, but we've had a couple of Hondas now in our family, or actually a few over the years. And I trust Hondas. I think trusted cars definitely and Honda usually go hand in hand. We know they've got some of those 1.5 issues. We know the CVTs aren't that crap hot either. But I'd say overall Honda's a pretty reliable car brand. And if I was going to put some faith and trust in one manufacturer, I'd say Honda is starting to inch its way up there now. Think about this for a second. Toyota over there is kind of, switching out their V6s. They're making them go away. And everybody loves the V6, the 3.5-liter or the 4 liters and all that fun stuff. And they were trustworthy. problem is people are losing a little bit of trust in some of the Toyota products because now they're getting rid of some of those most trusted engines. It's not that the 2.4 isn't good, because I think the 2.4 has been good. Largely, actually, has been pretty reliable. Time will tell on the 3.4s. But older V8s are going away. They're replacing them with these new turbo 6s, and the 6s are getting replaced with the turbo 4s. But Honda, with I went and looked, when it's speaking of 3-row SUVs, I went and looked at a brand new Pilot, and the Honda Pilot fit like a glove. I literally could not find an SUV that literally fit that nicely. Sitting in that third row, because you have to try the third row, right? I mean, it's not just, I don't have little kids anymore. I'm basically, mine are all grown up, and most of mine are in the 20s now. So I basically, have to fit adults now in the third row if we're traveling. And so the Pilot was by far the most roomiest third row, without going gargantuan and going with those long LTs and these massive, Escalades and all these ginormous SUVs, without going full in for these vehicles that are more mid-size SUVs. The Mazda CX-90 felt tight and narrow in the third row, and it was tough getting into the third row. So access was weak. Didn't love the dash on it. So other third rows, I tried out the Volkswagen Tiguan, trash box on wheels, if I can put that kindly. The third row, let me just simulate that for a second. This is going to get awkward, okay? This was me, okay? So I'm wearing shorts. So this was me sitting in the back row, okay? This is third row in a Tiguan right there, okay? But actually, it's more like this because the roof was pushing down on my forehead. So not all that great now, is it? So the Tiguan, too tiny, and you would expect it to. I mean, it's a small vehicle. But interestingly enough, for small SUVs, I tried out the Mercedes GLB. The GLB, the little square boxy little SUV based on the GLA and all of that. It actually had a third row that fit. I had elbow room, I had head room, I had knee room, I had probably this much space in front of my knees, and it was the perfect fit for a small SUV. But for mid-size SUVs, I tried the Highlander, a little snug actually in the back, a little narrow, a little tight on the knees. You sort of had a lower headroom there as well. It felt a wee bit tighter. Now, it was doable for adults, but very snug for that type of vehicle. And I don't, I'm not a Hyundai Kia fan, so I don't think I trust them too much. So, Mario, right on. You will be a grandpa. Well, probably at one point, with 4 offspring, if you will. I probably will be, I would expect at some point. Hopefully we can hold that off a little bit and wait and see how that works out. But yeah, I mean, I'll need that space. But hey, let's put it this way, Mario. If it fits for a couple of adults in the third row, then it'll definitely fit for grand ones, right? So we should be good. So I'm looking for the third row. I'm not that old yet. I'm getting there, but I'm not that old yet. Let's just see. What else do we have here? Boy, oh boy, some great comments here. Let me just catch up here. Mario, I read the Mini is the third most reliable brand after Lexus and Toyota. Well, they've certainly gotten a lot better. And because they're affiliated with BMW, they are better. And some of their more modern drivetrains are better. The real question is, would you put that ahead? I guess ask yourself this: would you put this ahead of, say, a Mazda, or something like that? Because they've got a stellar reputation these days. BMW's getting a lot better, but if you're trusting it as a reliable vehicle that you're going to own for 10 years, which one's probably going to cost you less? Because what's interesting. So here, I read an article when I was looking at that Volkswagen Tiguan, which is kind of along the same idea here. It's the Volkswagen, it's the German-made products. A lot of them are built in a way, and a lot of it, I think, has to do with maintenance and design and engineering and the way they package it all up, is that Volkswagen advertised that their cost of ownership was lower than a CRV and for some of their competitors for the first 4 years. But there was a sort of chart that I saw, whereas you see the Hondas and Toyotas sort of level off, the Volkswagen was less up to that 4-year mark, but as it crossed that 4 or 5 years, and then it grossly exceeded costs of some of their competition from Hondas and Toyotas. So for the first few years, they're reliable. The question is for a lot of the German products in general, what does that 10-year look like? Because I know for me, I keep a lot of my vehicles for a long time, and I like to hold on to them. So I guess time will tell. I'd like to see what long-term ownership looks like for that. What else we go? Let's see. CY Wood. That's great news about the Honda. 100%. The older Hondas, like our 2012, is better than the new ones. Period. Not as fast, not as fuel efficient, more reliable. Naturally aspirated, torque converter auto. Then in 2014, I believe it was, they came out with the CVT. Then in 2016, they came out with that 1.5 turbo, and then all bets were off for Honda. But that's where the older ones are a lot more durable. What do we got here? Force Hobbles. Hey brother, what's going on? Great channel. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for the support, and thanks for reaching out, and thanks for joining here too on a Friday afternoon, by the way. Force Hobbles says Honda Passport all the way, much better. I agree. If I didn't need that third row, the Passport is nicer because it's a nicer proportion. It's shorter, but it's basically the same vehicle. You get the same V6, and you get the same more or less chassis layout without that extended ass. So it's a better looking vehicle. It's a little lighter, and it drives better. So I would say if you don't need the third row, the Passport's a nicer vehicle for sure. Let's just see here. David Lowe. We have wish Mazda would put the 6 in a coupe. Wouldn't that be fun, hey? Wouldn't it? Could you imagine if they put that inline 6, tuned it, and then put that in an MX-5? How about that? Yeah, you betcha. That could be actually pretty cool. Mario, B48 and no rust. You know what, Mario? I would agree with that. And I think if there's one thing that I'll say BMW and Mini and that brand as a whole, is B48s, B58s are bulletproof, B38s. But even more to the point is you say no rust. They don't rust. I mean, I look at 10-year-old Mercedes and there's rust around the fenders. I look at 10-year-old Audis and there's rust around the fenders. I look at 15-year-old BMWs and there's no rust. It's not until you get into that 20, 25 year, if they're a daily user, then you're finding that a lot of BMWs they really resist. And I think structurally, BMWs are also what I've found, and I've owned a lot of BMWs. And for those who've watched the channel for a long time, you'll know that I used to be a real fanboy, but I can still appreciate what they do. And there's some great products coming out of that brand. Even though I only have the M5 right now, I'm not dailying any kind of BMW. I do see that they are creating a fairly robust product overall. So yeah, I would agree. Rocky says, I wish Subarus would fix all their oil leak issues and change their boxer setup. It would be more robust without leaks and head gasket issues. Subaru's build quality is impressive except for the engine. Yeah, I would agree. And they get the best all-wheel drive system, but I think they need to turf that CVT, if we're being honest too. Put a better automatic transmission, put an auto and or a manual in there, fix up their head gasket problems, fix up their engines, maybe take one out of the book of Porsche. They know how to build a pancake engine. Maybe go back to there, maybe collaborate with Porsche and figure out how to get past some of these problems. Absolutely. I think it's a great brand with great potential. And the lower center of gravity with the flat 4 makes it a great platform. What else we got here? Force Hobbies says, I'm working now at Rutgers, New Brunswick. I got to run. Just wanted to say hi. Hi, Force, and thanks for coming, and hope to see you on the next one for sure. Maybe during the week. If you want to drop a line on one of the videos, that'd be cool too. Princess Ray says, hi. Our Volkswagen Golf R, stay away from. The R, again, a derivative, I believe, of the EA888. Now, the thing with Volkswagen Audi, a lot of their highly tuned versions of everything seem to get a little bit more focused. They seem to get a little bit more attention to detail. I wouldn't say it's a reliable, highly trusted vehicle. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say any of those 2 liters. What I would say though is the trade-off is worth it, in my opinion, because the R now you're putting up with some of the challenges with that, with that turbo 4-cylinder engine, but because it's so fun to drive, it's peppy, it's it's tunable. I do believe that it's a fun car to drive. I know a guy who had an S3 Audi, which kind of had the same engine, and he put a ton of miles on his, and he was fine. He had the DCT, and he didn't really have any major issues there. He had some problems with the passenger side airbag and the sensor in the seat. Had an issue, I think, with a couple issues with the suspension and the roof and the glass top. But drivetrain, he was good, and he had quite a few miles on it. So um, Princess Princess B, Civic Type R better, 10 times better. I wouldn't even think twice. The only thing better about the Golf is it's sort of got that legendary following, and Golf has that group of folks that just love the Volkswagen. Doesn't matter what they do, what they build, it's always going to love that. So I feel like they have a strong fan base. I mean, Civic tuners do too, but um, the only downside, the Civic's a front wheel drive, right? And the Golf R is all wheel drive. So you could put on a set of winter skins, and the Golf R would probably be a better all year rounder. But realistically, the Civic R, I would probably buy before I would buy the Golf. You betcha. Mario, please buy the V12 manual Aston Martin. Let's just see. Are quite reliable and perfect for car YouTubers. Yeah, I was looking at those, Mario. I really was. I know last meeting or last live stream here, you had kind of dropped a nugget or two there about the V12s, and appreciate that. They're cool cars, and given the cost as new, it's amazing the kind of deals you can get there. Yeah, I got to take a closer look. The problem is around here, there's not a lot of them to look at, and I think to even take a closer look, I'd have to travel. Haven't had a chance to travel too far lately. Um, really, really pushing the channel. What's been going on in the life here recently is lots of changes in the background, new editors, some changes even in the background with manager levels and the editors we got going on here. I'm ramping up a couple of other new channels, and there's a lot's happening. So I haven't had a lot of time to even kind of leave. I go film, I edit, I research, collaborate, make calls, do some editing, and it's just like this cycle of round and around. I need to get out, and you're right. I think I need to go take a closer look, maybe travel a little bit. Maybe head to Vancouver, Toronto. Those are where we'll probably find some of those cars. I got to take a look there, Mary. I'm not going to lie. Even more importantly, I think I've never driven one, so I think I've got to try driving one. And then we'll know. Princess B, slower and humbler, though. I want some luxury. Yeah, see, that's the thing, and that's a trade-off. I presume you're talking Golf R versus the Civic. The Golf's going to feel a little bit, a little bit dressed up. If you're going that route at all, if I could maybe even ask, hey, have a look at the price point is so close between the Golf R and the base trim Audi S3, but they have the same drivetrains. I would almost certainly without a doubt, take a look at the Audi. You'll pay higher insurance rates. Maintenance costs might be a little higher because you get the name on it, but it has a dressier interior. The MMI system's a little cleaner in the Audi. It just makes it feel even just a tad bit more luxurious. So maybe take a look at the Audi A3 as well, or sorry, the S3, or even the RS3 is a bit of a jump, but that RS3 is even better with that Turbo 5. I would definitely kind of contemplate looking at that one. What else do we have here? So when we talk about trustworthy brands, some of the most trustworthy brands, I already kind of mentioned Honda. They got their V6. We also know that V6 has had some problems. We talked, and I've shared this on videos, and I'm actually this video I'm going to be sharing actually coming up real soon. I created a video. You're going to love it. Toyota versus Honda reliability. Perfect. I kind of do the swap back and forth, and I kind of talk about that in more depth. So you're going to want to see that video coming up real soon too. But I do that video comparison, and that's the thing. Honda creates these V6s. Toyota no longer does that. But Hondas, they had their problem with their V6s. They had those machining issues, and they had a batch of V6s, from the Passports and the Ridgelines and the Pilots that were breaking. They had machining issues in the bottom end, and these engines were a problem. So there was a batch of them. They're being looked at. Honda's fixing them on their dime. But outside of that, the V6 is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Plus, they're the only NA engine out there right now between the two, really, that's still regular. Either that, I shouldn't say that, larger engine for mid-size SUVs. Toyota's using, more small 4 cylinders with hybrid, but Honda's kind of keeping it a little bit more old school, and I like that. Mario, you got this. Yes, you betcha. I think we'll definitely have to maybe take a look at some of those cars for sure. Yeah, Mario, any other ideas? Any other ideas? I saw it's a little disheartening with what I hear. I mean, speaking about the British cars, with the Jag F Type, I love that V8. When I rev it up and snap, crackle, pop, it was wonderful. But now they're going away, and apparently they're taking a little bit of a sabbatical or a day off. I saw, our good friend there, Doug DeMuro, talked about this and saying that basically they're sort of lost in translation. They've sort of moved their ICEs along, and then they're trying to develop these electric vehicles. But the problem with that is now the market seems to be shriveling on the electric vehicles. So now they're sort of stalled in the middle. And I don't even know if they can come back from this, if we're being honest. But I saw pictures of the latest Jaguars pure electric that look pure hypercar. So Jaguar's got some interesting things, but I don't know. I don't know what the future looks like there. It's kind of bleak. What do we have here? Night of Alemia. You think the way Stellantis is doing, you think the way the Stellantis is going, you think Dodge, Jeep, and all those brands will disappear like the dinosaur. Well, first of all, not trustworthy at all. Those brands, Stellantis. Here's what I'm going to say. It's unfortunate that they, and I guess in some ways, I personally like Alphas, Fiats, Maseratis, Ferraris. Oops, kind of a funny, comment there. I like those brands, not because of reliability, but because it's like I said earlier on some of the other cars, because the trade-off that they give. I mean, how many other cars drive the way this thing drives? How many other, even like an Alpha, it has sort of a flair to it. I don't think the reliability is there with a Honda. Neither is a Maserati. And Maserati, you're going to eat your shorts on reliability. So it's terrible in that regard. So a lot of these Italian brands that Stellantis owns, I love those brands. Now, they're not reliable per se, but they're also not that bad either. I would put an Alpha, other than they're very difficult to service because the dealer network's small, but I would put an Alpha against a modern day Audi. I would put an Alpha ahead of anything like Jaguar or Land Rover for reliability. So I don't think they're that bad. So Italian stuff aside, their North American garbage is that. Dodge, trash. I mean, look at, I hate to say, and I hope I'm not insulting anybody here, because I have an old Dodge. I have an old Ram, an 03 Dodge Ram, before they switched it and called it Ram. I have a Dodge Ram. That's the old 4.7 V8. It rattles. It makes noise when it's cold. It sounds like a diesel, but it's a gas. It's not well made. There's fender gaps like this, and there's rattling noises and clunking, and the interior isn't that well made, but it's easy to fix. So I keep driving it, and it's good that way, and it tows the boat and does those things. But Rams, now the new ones have the best interiors, But Jeeps, they price themselves out of the market. I remember at a time, I had a TJ years ago. I bought a 2-year-old TJ, the 4-liter V8 TJ Sport with a hard top and soft top. And I bought that car. I bought that Jeep, 2 years old, had like 35,000 kilometers on it, slightly used. And I bought that thing for like 12 grand or $11,000. It's ludicrous what Jeep's do, and Stellantis is destroying that brand. They're destroying the brand. I think Jeep's dying personally. The Wagoneer is trash in my opinion. It's nice. It looks nice. It's just a big tank. It's just more of the reliability factors are going to creep in there. Grand Cherokees, we know what the Eco Diesel, not a good engine. Everybody gives those away. You can't even give them away on the car lots because people know the problems with those things. It's just the Grand Cherokees have never appealed to me. So Jeep, the Compass, overpriced. I've seen them from $47,000 to $55,000 here in Canada. What a joke! 55 grand for a Compass? It's trash. They've priced themselves out of the market. Wranglers, way too much money. I mean, if you're paying $80,000 for a Wrangler, I think there's some screws kind of falling out. I hate to say that, and I really don't mean that disrespectfully. I love the Wranglers. I love them. I think they're cool. I just think they're way overpriced. I think if you sliced the Wrangler trim, all the various trim levels, sliced the price 50%, I think that's where they need to be. Until that happens, they're on their way out the door, as is every other Jeep product. I think what we're seeing with Dodge, it's garbage. The Durango, poorly made. The seats feel like Glad garbage bags. They feel like a tackle box. The plastics are cheap. High, that hard plastic, that rough texturing you often find on, that plastic toolbox you find at Canadian Tire, or these old hardware stores. You get those little cheap toolboxes, that are $5.99, with that single clasp in the middle, that plastic, that hard, scratchy plastic. That's the interior of a Dodge. Leaves little to no inspiration. So I don't like them. I think for what they are, if you sliced everything that Dodge made in half and Jeep in half, I think they'd be competitive, because then you're getting what you expect, right? But if you're paying $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, you don't expect a cardboard box tucked away inside a fisherman's tackle box. It's just not. It's just, yeah, I think they're trending downwards and outwards. And the CEO, I think he's on borrowed time, in my own opinion. We've heard about this. I've talked about it on my other channel, Easy Car Buying. And I think he's going to say bye-bye, but he's okay. He got his 50% raise. He's got, $39 million annual salary now. So, I mean, he'll be fine. Like, there's no shedding of tears. But I do think that they're not in good shape. Let's just see here. What do you see? Marcel Farrell. Yes. Hey, welcome back, Marcel. I do appreciate you stopping in. Thanks so much. And thanks again for, participating in the membership program and being a major supporter, a big time supporter. And I definitely want to give you a special shout out, Marcel. So I really do appreciate that. Hey, Mark, how's it going, my friend? Thought I'd tune in. Well, welcome there, Marcel. I'm really glad you did stop in. Any further questions you want to ask about your cars specifically, anything that you'd like to know more? But I do appreciate, Marcel, again, special shout out as a member and as a supporter, strong supporter of the channel. We do appreciate that. So glad to have you in for sure. That's awesome. What do we have here? We have Dodge. I hate driving. So Night of Alemia says, my father owns a Dodge and I hate driving it. And every Chrysler product that has been in my family has been garbage. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at with that. Like, I think they're junk. I own one and I'm okay with admitting they're junk. My dad had one and it was junk too, but his was from the generation they were better, because he had the older 318, the 318 cubic inch, the older generation. And that was one of their best engines they've ever made, the old 360s and 318s. But they've never been really well-made vehicles. But when they were priced accordingly, they were okay. And I'm okay with that. And I would drive a Dodge for the right price. I would drive a Jeep for the right price. But they're not even in the market. So for me, it's more insult, really. It's a poke in the eye because I think they're just priced out of their gaunch. Knights of Lemia says there is a police station in the States that owns 11 Durangos with broken engines and no fix for them. If it's not the Durangos, it's the Ford Exploders. I don't know what it is. I think it's just like they feel like they're compelled to support these domestic products. There must be some contractual obligation there or something, but yeah, it's too bad. I feel for them. Guess it's hard for them to catch up to you, to give you a speeding ticket if they blow an engine and blow a rod or something as they're trying to catch up to you. That would be kind of almost humorous, really. But what do you say? Aslidin Mustafo heard about BMW's designer changes. Well, what have you heard about that? I mean, their changes, yeah, they're quite different. I mean, BMW has really done a lot different. It's a different brand. I mean, have you seen what's been going on with the style of these vehicles? I say no more. Just take a look. Go take a look at a local dealership lately, and you'll see. But they are in a need of sort of a rethink, I believe, in the branding and the look and the style. Have you seen the new X2? Is it the X1 and X2? Oh, no. They fed that one with a slingshot. Oof. So what do you think of Nissan Pathfinder 2024 V6 third row? Joey K. I know that they've gone back. They're going Pathfinder. They've changed it up a little bit. And I think they're going back with a torque converter. They're getting rid of Jatco. And I would say it's an effort to move in the right direction. I just think that a quick first model major refresh is always going to be a bit of a mistake. I'd like Toyota. I wouldn't bother there yet. I think I would look at the Nissan with the revised designs in 5 years from now, but I don't trust what they've been doing for the last 10 years. So I think with Nissan, I'm not even looking at them right now because I truly believe they need a little time in the saddle with the new style and the new design to build that trust. I don't trust what they've been building, and so I need some time. If we're being honest, I have looked at them. I know they're on the list of third rows, but I'm not even looking at them right now. So, Raymond Rife, yeah, 100%. I like the emoji. That's great. We got Knight of Lemia says, I used to love Ford, but the quality has gone down the toilet again, overpriced, piss poor quality. You name it. Yeah, 100%. And I think what Ford did so wrong, in my opinion, was, again, like a lot of these manufacturers trying to get too big for their britches. And I don't want to sound like that old crusty, hey, the old grandpa says too big for his britches. Or pardon me. Again, I'm trying to be funny. I know I'm not funny. It's a Friday afternoon. What can I say? Let's all have some laughs. Let's have some fun with this. But yeah, you know what? Ford has never been the highest quality, but when they kept it simple, they were fine, right? Their old V8s, naturally aspirated V8s, were cool. They were good. They weren't amazing, but they were good. Then they started introducing this, EcoBoost. EcoBoost, really? 3-cylinder, 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, EcoBoost engines, turbocharging, which Ford is, they got some learning to do, in my opinion, but turbocharging adds complexity, adds heat, adds failure. Direct injection adds complexity, adds carbon fouling, adds failure, and more expensive parts. Variable valve timing adds complexity. All of these things Ford introduced with the EcoBoost engines. And then to make matters worse, they go and use, have you seen that EcoTurd or EcoSport? That little, I don't know, what do I call it? I don't know. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it's not a good product. It's a really tiny little SUV. It uses a belt for an oil pump drive. The oil pump is driven with a belt. Whoever thought that could be possibly a good idea? I mean, that belt, you break the belt, you lose oil, and you're driving down the road 30 seconds later, you're your oil light comes on, you all of a sudden start to knock, and then your engine starts to smoke and it's all over at the crying. It's that simple. The belt should never be driving your oil pump, but they're doing it. I mean, what's wrong with the good old-fashioned gears like every other builder's been doing for years over years over years? There's just too much junk, too much corner cutting, in my opinion. Ford and their cam phaser, just lots of cam phaser issues. So yeah, I don't trust Ford all that much these days either. Mario, how often do you drive your M5? Never. I was looking at it today. It's got a half inch of dust on it. And I was thinking the other day, I should take this thing out for a drive. I just cleaned up the garage. The garage was so full of junk and mess. And I just cleaned up the garage. And I was thinking, I should take this thing out, pull it out, clean it up, take it for a spin around the block and see how it runs again. But I opened the door. And there's this aroma inside that was, oh man, I love that car. Still has that fresh leather smell. I love that car. I don't drive it. I haven't driven it in probably 3 years, 4 years, 3 years maybe. And even then it was only for a spin around the block. I know I got to take it out. I love that car. I still love that car because it's still, it just looks mean. It looks beefy. It has a great sound. It's a great car. Anyway, no, I haven't been driving it at all, unfortunately, but maybe soon. Jerry G. Hey, Mark, what would be a better buy? 22 Lexus RX 350 with the V6 or the redesigned 23 Lexus 4-banger turbo? Yeah, well, I honestly, because I don't think, well, there's two things with the Lexus RX for starters. I think not everybody loves that big mouth grill on the Lexus, but I think the new style looks even worse. If you look at that upper section, it almost looks like they pulled some tight shrink wrap across it, and you could still see those like the slices and dices, but the shrink wrap over it, I don't know. I'm just kind of going on. So from a stylistic perspective, I love the back end of the new Lexus, but that's not enough to sell me on the new stuff. And the Turbo 4s I wouldn't buy over the V6. If it's a 1 year difference, I would 100% buy that V6. If I could find one with good low miles, that's the key. Get one with low mileage, and then you're good. You're going to hold on to that for 10 or 15 or 20 years. So I would buy the V6. The Turbo 4, I mean, it's a good engine. It's peppy. I've driven these Lexus vehicles with that Turbo 4, and it's zippy. It's fine. But the V6 is just tried and true, and it's going to last a long time, and there's no real surprises. So yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah, so Raymond Reif also says V6 all the way. So yeah, definitely. Hey, Mario, you said if I had money, had the money, and my best friend was a mechanic, I would for sure own an old Land Rover Defender. Hey, Mario, have you seen over in the West End? If you haven't been over there, go take a scooch over to the Jag dealer in the West End. Go to the back, and you'll see they have an old Defender there. It is awesome. I don't know if you've seen that there, Mario. Go take a look. If you're in town there, go scoot around to the backside of the Jag dealer. You'll see it there. I was there last weekend, and that thing is awesome. I love it. It's cool. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, you almost need a ride-along mechanic for sure. Let's see. What do you think about the N55 engine? Ron Newval says, durability-wise and cost to maintain, a used purchase. Thanks. Ron, first of all, what I'd say with the N55, better than the N54. If you're not like one of these guys that wants to go out and like tune it and say, well, the N454 has forged bottoms, but the N55 doesn't. And if none of that matters, because it really doesn't, unless you're tuning it and you're going for 1,000 horsepower, none of that matters. The N55 is the better engine. And there's such a big jump between an N55 and a B58 that I understand you looking there. If if you're willing to stretch and get something with a couple of extra Ks on it or miles, the B58 is the better way to go. Go like a 2017, 2018 and newer. But if that's outside of the budget, I get it. The N55 reliability is moderate. Make sure you've got a lot of good history on the cooling system upgrades, flushes, water pumps, thermostats, radiators. Try to understand what the previous owner's been doing with that stuff. Make sure there's no leaks in those areas. And because those will leak, those fittings, they'll all leak. And that, with the N55, it's getting up there in age. It's going to start to leak. It's a great engine it's actually not that terribly unreliable. That's what I call moderate, right? But I would strongly advise that you be prepared to DIY a lot of that work yourself. Be ready to work on some of the things. Don't be scared to work on it, because you probably learn very quickly. Either you pay a ton of money at the dealer, or you just learn to fix some of those parts yourself. And you can, I don't know, Rock Auto or FCP Euro, for parts, replacement parts, and just learn to do DIY some of the stuff yourself. But I would say it's a moderate level of reliability. Would I own one? Maybe, for the right price with good maintenance service history. I would consider it. I would never buy an N54 again. Garbage. I would get something, keep it more bone stock, and with an M55. And yeah, as long as they had good service history, the miles weren't terribly high. Yeah, I would buy one. Let's see. Port City Investments thought on Jeep Wranglers. I heard they have an issue with the aluminum just corroding. It's interesting. I haven't really heard that issue, although it wouldn't surprise me. I haven't heard about aluminum. Well, I should say, are we talking about the body? Because I have seen body panels, the hinges, and certain parts corrode, and then the paint peels away and it just turns to crap. There are body panels and some of those that do seem to corrode and flake, and like paint has never been a strong point on the Wranglers. Neither has the frame underneath, because that's steel frame underneath, and that will corrode. It'll look like an old Dodge pickup truck underneath too in short order. So yes, they will and can corrode. I would say, again, a Jeep Wrangler is a fun vehicle. My personal opinion, the best Wrangler they ever made was the old 4-liter TJ. I think that was the peak, and then it was all downhill from there. And when they went with that 3.6 Pentastar, I believe it was, moderate. I would go that Pentastar though over any of the other trash. Forget about the hybrid trash. Forget about the Turbo Force trash. Forget about the Recon trash. Stick with the V6, and even better with the manual. Now the manual had a problem, and I think with the clutch release bearing or throw bearing, there was an issue in there too, and recalls. So you didn't want to follow up on that. And I've actually seen some for sale that still had outstanding recalls. Maybe they can't fix it properly. I don't know what the story is there. But there is an issue with the throwout bearings on the manual. But I would buy the manual Wranglers. That's what I would prefer to do. And I think, not that the autos are the horrible, but I would go with the manuals on that. Let's just see here. Raymond Rife says, so do you undercoat your vehicles before winter? If yes, what's used in Canada? Raymond, I never have. And maybe that's just me not caring. Most of the vehicles I drive in the winter, like, let's put it this way. The old Ram I never have, because I bought it used. It's got high miles on it, well, moderate miles, and it's a truck. It's a steel frame. Don't care. I had a BMW, that 335. I daily drove that. Didn't worry about it, because BMWs I find hold up pretty well. So I never really bothered, but I do clean them very regularly. I want to say religious about it, but I'll say I'm very religious about keeping the car clean. And in the winter, it's hard, but I don't park my cars indoors. So what I do is, usually the car washes here shut down at -20, but as soon as the salt doesn't even activate anyway underneath the cars until, I think, like -5 or 0. So it's not chewing away on the paint anyway until you get closer to 0. So as the weather starts to trend warmer, if I'm in salty conditions, once I'm above minus 10 or get around minus 10, minus 20, I'll go wash the car. And I try to keep it clean every week. I try to wash the car underside as best I can every week. And that's every vehicle I've ever owned. So I was just a lot more religious about getting underneath there, wiping underneath, washing into fender wells, washing underneath. And I don't just like spray the sides and then call it a day. Definitely get underneath there, wipe the fender wells, get your fingers in the lips and wipe the fender lips and try to get all that crust out of there, because that's what's going to rust your car from the inside out. No, I really haven't undercoated, if we're being honest. Yeah, so yeah, you wash a lot as well too. Yeah. I don't know if you're from around these parts, or Raymond, but yeah, definitely in the saltier northern climates, definitely you've got to do that. You betcha. Yeah, no problem. What else do we have here? So in terms of trust, Hondas, I trust. We drove one. And when I said that 2012 Honda, that we drove to the California, we drove to Los Angeles and San Diego and Vegas this summer. And we were climbing, and this was in July. So we were in the midst of 40, 50 degrees Celsius temperatures, 100, 110, 115 degrees Fahrenheit. And that car climbed every hill, no muss, no fuss, no overheating. We had four people in the car, full of luggage. And while it struggled to climb some of the hills a little bit, had to downshift a few times, it climbed it. The transmission was good. The engine was good. No overheating. I trust it. That's how I build faith in my vehicles. When I'm good driving from Northern Canada down to San Diego, and I have faith that I can drive that car all the way, I've got faith. We also took the Toyota Camry, the new Toyota Cat 21, 22, whatever we have there. We drove that as well. And I have total faith in that. Total faith that that car will make the distance. Oh, what do we have here? Marcel. As for reliability, BMW has probably gone up on the ladder because they've been messing around with turbocharging for a long time. 100% Marcel, you know it. Big time. See, that's what's funny, because Honda's dealing now with these turbo problems with 1.5s. Now they're figuring out the burn. Toyota, Lexus, figuring out the burn now because they're starting to move into turbocharging. See, they're learning. It's that learning curve. But BMW has been doing it since 2007 with the N54. And they felt the burn in 2007 and 8 and 9 and 10. And then we got into the N54, 55. And by the time they got in the first generation of the B58, heat encapsulation, stronger bottom end, better fuel system, better injectors, better fuel pumps, better. And you're right. They've learned better turbos, got rid of the twin turbo, went with single turbo, twin scroll, and everything is vastly better now. And they've learned from their mistakes. And I trust that Toyota will too, but BMW has. And that's a big reason why their newer engines are so much more reliable. Marcel also says, this was usually what made them unreliable apart from the plastics underneath the hood, but now it seems to be their strength. I would agree with that. And other than now, the N63, they had their early generation before the TU. They had problems with heat and turbos in the hot V, melting heads and doing all kinds of problems because of the plastics and the turbos. But a lot of it was not adequate shielding. They didn't really take that into account. But BMW now is packaging it in a way where they're creating better shielding and creating better packaging in the overall design of that vehicle. And they're having less issues. Plastics can be a bit of a problem, and they still will be with time. But they're learning, and they're learning how to make these little adjustments on every generation. That's why even the B58 had a first gen, second generation, and they're getting better. So yes, BMW has learned a lot from some of their big mistakes, and they're fixing it. They're fixing it in a big way. So 100%. Hey, Jai Singh. No words other than thank you so much there, Jai Singh. Again, I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support as well. So, Jai, let's get to your question, shall we? Deciding out of new Volkswagen GTI and Audi A5, I recognize the GTI will have better resale value, but has touchscreens to control everything, whereas Audi has buttons and knobs. Does the reduced reliability offset the positive that will hold better resale? That's a great question. That is an absolute great question there, Jai. Here, let me do this. Give you, yeah, let me just uh, give you one of those. I'm going to say that is a really, really good question. Now, generally, Audis are going to depreciate quicker because it's a luxury car brand, and people tend to shy away from that. And I know we spoke about this in the past about that being the factor. They will lose their value a little quicker than they would in the case of a Volkswagen and a GTI. They would. I mean, luxury versus non-luxury. Also, people on the used car market are going to look at, a base A5. And I know there's a lot of young buyers that are looking at A5s and are still going to shop for those kind of vehicles. But I would put dollars to donuts. You're going to have a stronger presence and a stronger community that are more interested in that used Volkswagen GTI down the road in 5 or 10 years. I would put dollars to donuts that Volkswagen in 10 years, maybe 15 years, will have a stronger following and hold a better value. Now, we also know, to your point, the Volkswagen and all of the infotainment system that they've gone with. And by the way, pardon this, I just drove a brand new Atlas, brand new, 25 or 24. I took one out for a drive last week, and I loved the electronics. Personally, I think they're great. I know I talk about a lot of this in the videos about too much tech, too much buried into these displays, too much buried into the screens. And I would say that is a factor. And I think a lot of people in the future will look at backdating. They'll look at what's the simpler option. The knobs and buttons are often usually the more preferred way to go. They prefer something that's simple. You don't even have to, you'd be driving along and you're just like reach over. You already know intuitively. You don't even have to take your eyes off the screen because you're just, you know where that knob and that button is. This button, or that, on the here, everybody, you know where that is. After you drive the car for 6 months, you know where that is intuitively. But as soon as you know you've got to go into that screen, you've got to navigate and you've got to open up menu and then open up a menu, that takes your eyes off the screen. And a lot of people don't like that. And I understand that's 100%, because even driving that Atlas, I found the same thing. I struggle. I'm like, how do I change these heater controls? And there was, it took me a little bit, but the actual heater control was right underneath in a very narrow band. You could actually get to it. It's not obvious. And the controls are a little bit cryptic. I think with time, people learn it and understand it. And I think like anything, you do figure it out. I mean, BMW's been doing a lot of iDrive. Audi's been doing a lot of MMI and a lot of those buried features within. But it's still nice to have the core functions, heater controls, stereo controls in a button format, because they're just simpler, easier, and less distracting. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, honestly, it's the white elephant. It's the giant elephant in the room. And I think the elephant in the room here is when we're talking about reliability, because you get a big digital display, and it's now, as you can see, a lot of these new vehicles and the Volkswagens, they're half of them are integrated. It's not even just like no longer that big wart on top of the screen. A lot of these now are blended in and they're integrated seamlessly into the dashboard. And Volkswagen is kind of like that. You're going to have to disassemble a lot of stuff. And it's not just replacing that screen, because if and when, and I mean, let's face it, we have this. I mean, here is, it's electronics, and we all know they fail, and they do. And the beauty is this iPhone, I can just sign up for a new deal, and I can, for $50, $80, $100 a month, I can just pay and get a new phone and be good. Or I could take it into a repair shop and get it fixed quite cheaply. But at Volkswagen, it's not going to be cheap, and it's going to be quite costly. Now, that being said, I mean, with all of that being said, if you're looking at a brand new A5, So just keep this in mind there, Jai. So yes, generally keep it simple. And the value, I think, is offset there because I think the value stays higher on the GTI. But what hurts is a little more is that's that generation of added complexity. So I think you're going to be in a very similar spot. I still think the Volkswagen will hold better value in the long term. I do with the GTI. But remember this is what I'll say. And I think a lot of people will recognize this with time. Even that A5, you may not have all of that extra integration, but even their MMIs with that center screen, and then also in the dash, Audis now with their newest Audis, everything is even. It's now a pod, so you still have that electronic integration right in the dash, right? So you have that external piece, you have that center, the pod, behind the steering wheel, and that's all digital now in an Audi too. It's just it's shaped in the way of the dashboard. So really, you have the same type of technology in there, and you're still going to have a lot of the probability of failure mode is going to exist in a lot of those vehicles in the Audis. Even though yes, you will have an extra couple of maybe external knobs and buttons. Oh, pardon me, we've got a phone call coming in here. We'll have to ignore that. But I think honestly, if it were me, I would probably be more inclined. Pardon that. Wow, that's sorry about that phone call there, everybody. But I think I gotta just yeah. Okay. I don't even know I have that. Like we use this now. Are you guys the same way? You got a cell phone. Did you cancel your home phone? Like we have this landline nobody uses. Wife, kids, none of us ever use it. We all just use this, our own cell phones. So that's really more of just like a landing point for nonsense and spam. Anyhow, so yeah, and I noticed their Port City investment says get the S5 if it's in your budget to Jai Singh, and and we did touch on this last time. I was kind of the same idea. I mean, the S series, you step up into the better upper grade engines, and generally in the Audi world, it feels like there seems to be less problems in the long run. But if it's not in the budget, that's fair. So long and short of it is, what does the price differential look like on resale down the road? I do think, I mean, that's one aspect of the resale of that vehicle. I think the overall package, though, is there's not enough there to say that it's totally offset. I still think the GTI will probably hold better value long term. And hey, here's a thought. We know the aftermarket is so strong for Volkswagen, not quite so much for Audi. I mean, they do have their aftermarket, but Volkswagen, I wouldn't even be surprised if they have retrofit kits down the road, right? I mean, they retrofit everything. So I wouldn't even be surprised there, Jai, if you can get a retrofit for the kit for the GTI. So I hope that kind of helps. I know I was a bit long-winded on that. I would probably still be inclined to go with the Volkswagen. I personally didn't mind the functionality of the electronic display and that new integration. But I understand the concern, and I know a lot of people don't like that. And I still prefer knobs and buttons. I do. But I do recognize the reliability aspect of that electronics isn't going to be a lot better than Audi. It's the same company. It's probably got the same brains in the background. They've just added a couple more extra knobs and buttons. I mean, look at it this way. And I hate to use the T word, but Tesla, they virtually have no knobs or buttons, unless you're getting into the S or the X. But their Ys and 3s have nothing. It's just a signal stock, and even that, I think now they moved it to the steering wheel, but that's virtually it. Everything is on there. So I've granted their resales in the toilet. So I mean, I don't know, take that with a grain. But yeah, I would say my preference would be the GTI, and I think long term the value would probably hold just a little bit better on the Volkswagen. Jai Singh, I don't drive enough miles for a diesel. Yeah, like I mean that would be, yeah, diesel would be, but the new diesel, the Volkswagen has a Dieselgate issues and all of that. But I think they make some good engine, like the diesel engines from that family. But yeah, I guess And diesels, if you're not putting on a lot of miles, if you're not hitting the highway every day, diesel engines are bad. Bad. Short trips will destroy a diesel engine quickly. Rocky, known rust proof is the best in Ontario. Or Crown rust proof is the best in Ontario. Yeah. Ontario is horrible for the salt. Horrible. I can even tell here in our province when I see vehicles from Ontario, you can just tell, and the 3 or 4-year-old vehicles, and they're rotted out and they look kind of rough. So there's no doubt about that. Raymond Bluff says yes, or Raymond Rife says yes, and Tony White says Nissan trucks. Yeah, now they get with the 3.8s, and you can still get a stick shift, and they don't have that torque converter in the auto, or they do have a torque converter in the auto or a manual, and they're no turbos. So yeah, they're still kind of a trustworthy truck. It's an old trusty Nissan truck. I would agree with that. They're not terrible. Jai Singh. So taking all this info into account, which one would you recommend? In terms of, I'm assuming you mean between the Volkswagen and the Audi, I would recommend the Volkswagen. I would go with the Volkswagen personally. But I recognize you like as well, probably the luxury feel of the Audi. But I would say I would go with Volkswagen. That would be my recommendation for what I know today. And I hope I don't have to eat my words. And I know there's a bit of a new platform, but really the new platform is really more based on that dashboard integration. The mechanicals are not that breakthrough or that new. So you're not it's not a total refresh of the product where you're worried about having this whole new platform to deal with reliability issues. So that's where I would recommend personally. Jan T says Volkswagen Touareg was sweet for sure. Marcel again says, I definitely prefer physical buttons. For safety alone, I moved away from the VW group because it really gets under your skin if you bring car into the dealer and they don't seem to be able to fix the issue. See, now that's another conversation, Marcel. That's another conversation. If we don't have faith in the dealer network, that's a bad scene. And hey, I'm glad you put that in there. And maybe Jai, take that as a piece of information, because people that have had experience, I mean, they're speaking from that. And I don't know which dealership Marcel's referencing, but is it unique maybe for that location, or is that in general? And yeah, that's frustrating if the dealers can't even fix it. And they say, I think, is it 3 strikes? If they can't fix it in 3 strikes, it's a lemon law. They have to take the car back. It's a lemon law fact. So, and Marcel, same thing as in continuous electrical gremlins, totally. But again, the continuous electrical gremlins, unfortunately, it's a VAG thing, right? So you're going to have that in Volkswagen, Audi, possibly Porsche, any of those vehicles of that family, they're all going to risk electrical gremlins. And we know that's one of the biggest issues with, and I mentioned looking at the third rows of the Volkswagen Tiguan that I was looking at. That's one of the big things when I was researching was the electrics. That was one of the common issues. So let's just see here. Marcel, do you have any detailed stats on how manufacturers score in terms of electrical infotainment issues nowadays, Mark? Marcel, not really as of yet. Not like hard numbers that I can say statistically, this brand is here, number of failures versus this brand. I do believe I've seen those spotty. I've researched this information at times, but I don't have a collection of some of the summary of some of these statistics. I do not have that where I could say, hey, here's this big spreadsheet, and here's the number of failures, electrical and otherwise. I know there are sites that focus on that deep down and get to the nitty gritty of that in terms of numbers and percentages. I don't have those numbers. I do like to focus on that. And when I'm talking about cars in a lot of my videos, and I discuss some of the problem areas, when I'm saying this car has reliability issues, faults on the dashboard, electrical brake fault, like those come from places of research. So I'm saying, yeah, you can expect brake faults, ABS faults, um, chassis faults, electrical. So I do pull that information out, but I'm not necessarily pulling out the hard numbers. But I'm sure that information's available. And that's a good point. That's a great question. I may have to kind of research that a little bit more in more depth. Um, Raymond Rife says, yes, was for the question about the home phone being dropped for sell only. Yeah, I think a lot of people do, right? Just get rid of the old home phone. It's pointless. Look at this. It's great. It's all there. That's all you need. Um, Touareg had fixed issues, parts from Germany, slow and not trained. Jan T says, so see Touareg. The Touareg was a softened down Porsche Cayenne, I believe. And yeah, they put their smaller engines in there, but it was same body and chassis. And yeah, see, that's the unfortunate part. A lot of these German vehicles, you're going to order parts. Sometimes you're going to wait. I had to wait for my F-Type too. I had to wait for a SIM card. I had to wait for a week for that. So a lot of these car brands, they just don't have that, that reliability, the access to parts, and that's always going to be the risk. So, um, let's see. Raymond Rife says, or a shift knob for a 6-speed manual over any CVT. Yeah, 100%. No CVT for this cowboy. I think I would struggle to ever own a CVT driven vehicle. And Marcel says, yeah, it makes sense. It's not black and white. Yeah, it's unfortunately, yeah, it's not. I'm assuming you're talking about the electrics and that. It's not. And it's funny too, because you can go through, I've seen some brands too where they have a bunch of issues for a couple of years, and then those same issues don't exist on the following couple of years. And then they might crop up 5 years later again. And I'm not even sure. There are contributing factors sometimes in the supply chain. Sometimes the distributors, the parts that they're getting their outsourced parts from, sometimes have problems in the parts that they're generating or sourcing out. Sometimes it's bad installation error. Sometimes it's a bad design in general or bad engineering. And there's a lot of factors, and it could be a Friday car too. So, hey, you know what? It's just, yeah, it's kind of hard to say. So, uh, John T, our local Toyota garage, thumbs down. Absolutely. And I would say service side isn't that hot in Toyota. We trust the brand, but I don't know about sometimes the network of servicing. Volkswagen pulled their dealership. Dealership garages matter too. Yeah, they do. And Lexus is that Florida? Change your oil, wash the vehicle. I buy by service center. Yeah, isn't that kind of gross? I've had cars too where they fix your car and then it's sitting out there and they hand it back. Here's your keys, ready to go, and it's dirty and it's and then they leave that plastic sheet on the seat because the mechanic forgot to take it off, and the cardboard is on the floor that they forgot to remove that, and the car's just all dirty. It's just not cool. But yeah, I guess that is the difference, and it's just sometimes in those little details. The devil's in the details, right? Um, Isaac O'Connell says Cayenne diesel or RX 450. I can maintain either. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if you're totally hands on, I would probably go with the diesel. I know this is a little bit of a controversy, but I would probably go with the diesel. I'm a little old school that way. Um, Part of the reason is I like the drivetrains, I like the performance, I like the economy. Not that you won't get it out of the Lexus. Lexus is probably going to be a little bit more reliable, but the Cayenne's a nicer vehicle, and then the diesel gets you tons of miles. And if you can fix it, hey, what the hell? There won't be many of those left, right? There won't be many of those left anyway. And as time goes on, you'll always be able to backdate and get yourself a used Lexus, whatever they're doing in the day. But to get a diesel from Porsche or one of those, that ship's going to be sailed soon. So, I mean, even from that perspective, I've even looked at possibly another BMW X5 35D. Don't tell anybody. I'm just looking. Marcel, what year, Isaac? So yeah, 2016. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I like diesels. I like the way they drive. I like the power bounds. I love the smell of diesel. What can I say? I'm a bit of a redneck. Kind of grew up on farms, and that's just kind of how it is. So, riding around on John Deere tractors in summer times, baling hay and doing all that. So I kind of have that background. So I love diesel. It has a bit more of even a sentimental value. The idling diesel tractor kind of brings back memories of the past as a kid, spending summers with uncles and my uncle and on the farm and enjoying all that. So I don't know. I like it. What can I say? But anyway, you know what? I'm going to cut it right there, everybody. Thank you so much. Friday's coming to a wrap. 418 here. What is it? MST. Thanks so much for joining, and I do appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Members, non-members, Marcel. Hey, if you're a member, thanks again, Marcel. If you're not a member, definitely want to get into the membership space. Just check in on that, and we definitely will focus on your questions first and foremost. Thank you so much, Jai, as well. Huge amount of support. I really do appreciate all of you guys coming in every single week to show support and to answer the questions. Offer me a little bit of challenge in some of the questions and answers, and I love it. I learn something every single day from each and every one of you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Raymond, and thanks, everybody. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you on Monday at my next video. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.